Hi, this is Patty Shannon. I'm a senior legal assistant at the Texas Ethics Commission, and this will be a presentation on the statutes and rules governing personal financial statements, commonly known as the PFS. And then we will go through Form PFS part by part to hopefully give some guidance on how to fill it out. If you have any questions while we are going through this presentation, you are welcome and encouraged to reach out to us. You can reach us by email at reception@ethics.state.tx.us, or you can call us at 512-463-5800. If you have questions about the PFS electronic filing application, how to reset your password, things like that, ask for technical support. If you have questions about where or how to fill out the personal financial statement, that's a question for the legal department. Before we go any further, you can find a wealth of helpful information about personal financial statements on our website. I've listed some of the locations of that information on this slide, and I will explain them as we go along. You can come back to this slide at any time to see where to find some particular information you need as you need it. Here are some of the questions we hope to answer during this presentation. Who files a PFS? Where do you file it? When do you file it? And what financial activity is included? The purpose behind filing a personal financial statement, as stated in Texas Government Code 572.001, is to give the public information about what financial or other interests their government officials may have. These are public documents that anyone can request to inspect, and they cover a wide range of financial and other activity on behalf of the filer, as well as his or her spouse or dependent children. So who files with the Ethics Commission? Chapter 572 of the Government Code lays out who is required to file a PFS with the Ethics Commission. This includes office holders and candidates for elective office for all of the offices listed on this slide. It also includes an appointee to any of these offices. Other individuals are also required to file their PFS with the Ethics Commission. Appointed members and executive heads of state agencies that exercise actual authority are included in that list. Certain university systems and institutions of higher education and certain river authorities are included also. Bodies that function in an advisory capacity only are not considered state agencies for purposes of Chapter 572. Certain gubernatorial appointees that file with the Ethics Commission are the only ones that may file with us on paper. Former or retired judges sitting by assignment, state party chairs, and other officials are some more individuals who file their PFS with the Ethics Commission. So who files locally? Local filers are not in the Ethics Commission's jurisdiction. We can answer questions about how to fill out the PFS form, but the Ethics Commission does not administer or enforce PFSs filed by local filers. These include statutory county court and probate judges and candidates for those offices. County judicial officials have the option to file with the Ethics Commission instead of their local filing authority. Some choose to do this because they can file electronically and import certain information on the templates we will discuss later. If a county court judge or candidate chooses to file with the Ethics Commission instead of their local county, they must file a statement with the county notifying them that their PFS will be filed with the Ethics Commission. And then these judges would become subject to the Ethics Commission's administrative late fine process. Who else files locally? For counties with a population of more than 100,000 people, the county judge, commissioner, attorney, and candidates for those offices file locally. For counties with a population of over 125,000 people, justices of the peace are required to file PFSs. Other county officials may be required to file PFSs if their county has a population of more than 125,000 people and their commissioner's court requires the filing. Those local filers could include the sheriff, constable, tax assessor and collector, county or district clerk, treasurer, auditor, purchasing agent, counties, candidates for those offices, and other county employees. These population numbers are as of the last federal decennial census. not necessarily current numbers. School district trustees can also file PFSs locally if the board adopts a resolution to require the filing or the Commissioner of Education requires it in certain circumstances. For school districts, if they are required to file it, their PFSs are filed with both the Board of Trustees and the Ethics Commission. Municipal officers and candidates must file PFSs if the population in their municipality is over 100,000 people. This could include the mayor, the member of the governing body, i.e. the city council members, the municipal attorney, and the city manager. Some directors of sports and utility and community venue districts are required to file PFSs if their county population is over 3.3 million. So when is the PFS due? For most office holders who file with the Ethics Commission, their PFS is due on April 30th. This is the general deadline if that filer held office on January 1st of that year. A filing deadline will move to the next business day if it falls on a weekend or holiday. Appointed state officers of major state agencies must file their PFS within 30 days after appointment or qualification to office, whichever is earlier. Appointed executive heads of state agencies must file their PFS within 45 days after assuming their duties. Judicial filers sometimes have different filing deadlines. Judicial appointees that file with the Ethics Commission will owe their PFS on April 30th if they were appointed on or before April 30th. If a retired judge sits by assignment on or before April 30th, they will also owe their PFS on April 30th. However, if a retired judge does not sit by assignment until after April 30th, they have an option to wait until they are assigned a case to file their PFS, and then they have 30 days from assignment to file it. PFS filers that file with the Ethics Commission and have a due date of April 30th can ask for an extension, which will be covered later. Candidates and nominees often have different filing deadlines than office holders. Candidates for state office owe their PFS not later than the 60th day after the date of the regular filing deadline for their ballot application on the primary election, or February 12th. Independent and write-in candidates may have different deadlines. Candidates for state office in a special election owe their PFS 5 days before the election, and nominees to fill a vacancy for statewide elected offices owe their PFS 15 days after the certificate of nomination is filed. If you are both an incumbent, meaning you are already elected and hold the office, and are also running for re-election, the filing date as a candidate controls. So your filing deadline would be February 12th, not April 30th. Only a TEC filer with the April 30th deadline may ask for a 60-day extension. This must be requested on or before April 30th, and the request is made through the PFS electronic filing application. Extensions are generally not available for other filers, i.e. candidates, appointed state officers, or appointed executive heads of state agencies. Generally, you can request this extension through the PFS electronic filing application beginning in March. Local filing dates are often the same as for state officers, but there are some differences. TEC does not have jurisdiction over the deadlines or extensions for local filers, and local filers should check with their local filing authority to see if an extension is available. Let's talk briefly about the penalties for failure to file a PFS in a timely fashion. For TEC filers, there is an automatic $500 administrative penalty that is assessed if your PFS is filed late. The fine can be raised up to as much as $10,000 in certain circumstances. You may request a waiver or reduction of that fine using the Statement of Defense, which you can find on our website. Late filed PFSs may also be subject to a sworn complaint. For local filers, you should contact your local filing authority regarding any possible penalties. A knowing and willful failure to file a PFS is a Class B misdemeanor. Now let's talk about what actually goes in your PFS. A PFS covers financial activity for the preceding calendar year. For example, a personal financial statement filed in 2021 covers activity for 2020. The PFS covers a wide range of financial activity, which we will get into later. It includes activity relating to the filer's family member, which is defined in Chapter 572 as the filer's spouse or dependent children. An individual's child, including an adopted child or stepchild, is the individual's dependent during a calendar year in which that individual provides more than 50% of the child's support. You can find instructions on our website, which you can see on that earlier slide, which take you line by line through the entire form. They are very helpful, and you might want to use those as you are filing your PFS. As you will see, not all categories, not all parts in the PFS apply to all filers. For instance, some only apply to members of the legislature. One caveat for local filers. Your county or municipality may have adopted disclosure requirements for the PFS that differ from those required for state officers, so always check with your local filing authority if you are not sure. The information on this slide should be read in conjunction with the next two slides. You must include financial activity on your PFS in which the filer had an ownership interest, which includes community property. Community property has to be disclosed even if the filer has no control, because the filer retains an ownership interest in the property. A filer must include this information if the filer exercised or held the right to exercise any degree of legal or factual control over the activity, notwithstanding a partition agreement. You must also include financial activity involving a spouse or dependent child if the filer exercised or held the right to exercise any degree of control over the activity. This includes a spouse's separate property. Determination of actual control is a fact-specific determination. In summary, the filer must disclose activity if they have an ownership interest or they have control over the interest of a family member. Before we go any further, you might want to get a copy of the PFS form and instructions in front of you as we move through the rest of this presentation. It will help as we go through each part of the PFS. Go to our home page at www.ethics.state.tx.us. Then click on Forms and Instructions above the picture, and then click on Personal Financial Statement. Just make sure you are using the form and instructions for the correct year. Remember that a PFS form for 1 year covers financial activity for the previous year. And by the way, don't leave presentation of your PFS until the last minute. There is no way to make it simple. It will take some time. The first thing TEC filers need to do is get a profile on our PFS electronic filing software. You do that by sending a Form Security-PFS to the email at the bottom of this screen. Form Security, no spaces, no dashes, at ethics.state.tx.us. The picture above is a blank form. Make sure that the form you use says -PFS at the end, because we have 3 different types of Form Security forms. If this is your first time filing a Form Security for your PFS, check the first 2 boxes in Section 4. Once we receive your Form Security, we will send an email to the email you put in Section 4A within 1 to 2 business days. It will contain your 8-digit filer ID number, which you should keep handy because that is how we will find your information, and your temporary login and password. Then you can go in and set your security questions and change your password if you wish. You can draft your PFS in the software and save the draft and come back to it later. Just make sure you remember to file it before the deadline. For TEC filers who have a lot of information to enter, there is a way to import your information from an Excel spreadsheet. Our awesome computer services department has designed Excel templates for almost every part of the PFS. Importing information is very helpful when you have a large number of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, businesses you own, etc. You cannot just attach your financial statement. You have to either fill out the parts by hand or import the information using the templates. If you want to import your activity, go to our home page, then click on Filing Reports above the picture, then click on TEC Filers, then Personal Financial Statement Reports. It will bring you to a page that has these links at the bottom. They include instructional videos for how to use the templates. It includes templates for almost every part of the PFS. And then at the very bottom, it has something called a CSV, Import File Format Verifier Application, which is a long way of saying that once you have completed a certain template, this is where you can check to make sure it all works properly before you import it into our software. Now let's start going through the individual parts, one by one. Part 1A deals with occupational income. It refers to current occupational income. Income received as a pension or from a retirement plan associated with past occupational income is not required to be reported as a source of occupational income. However, investments in a retirement account may be reportable in another category, such as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or dividends. Part 1B deals with retainers. This section asks for information about fees received by the filer or family member, or received by a business in which the filer or family member had a substantial interest, as a retainer for a claim on future services in case of need. 572.005 of the Government Code includes an explanation for what substantial interest is. An individual has a substantial interest in a business entity if they have at least one of 7 different situations that are detailed in that code. For example, last year, you received a retainer for $15,000 for consultation services from a client in case of need. You ended up proving $5,000 worth of those services during the calendar year. You should report the entire $15,000 retainer, not just what was used on this year's financial statement, which covers last year's activity. We will talk about parts 2 through 4 together. You must disclose stocks on Part 2, bonds on Part 3, and mutual funds on Part 4. This includes investments held in a managed fund. It applies to those items held by both the filer and the family member. If you own stocks or bonds outright, disclose them on Parts 2 or 3. If you own a mutual fund and that mutual fund owns stocks or bonds, disclose only the mutual fund on Part 4. If you had several transactions involving stock of a particular entity, i.e. you are a day trader, indicate the net gain or net loss resulting from those transactions for the entire year. You do not have to show the net gain or net loss from each sale of stock in the same business entity. Regarding stock options, there is no ethics advisory opinion on point, but we have said informally that they are not reportable as stocks, although they may be reportable as a beneficial interest in a business entity, which we will cover later. Part 5 covers income from interests, dividends, royalties, and rents. These must be reported if they exceed $900 during the year from any source. As will be true for a number of thresholds to be discussed during this presentation, this $900 threshold is adjusted annually for inflation. It will be $930 for the 2022 PFS, which covers activity through 2021. To find the latest numbers for any thresholds, go to Texas Ethics Commission Rule 18.31 for the latest numbers. This also includes income owed to the filer and family members if the filer has actual control. If the source of the income is a publicly traded corporation, you check the box in Part 5 and include only the corporation's name. Do not include the address. For reinvested dividends, there is no ethics advisory opinion on point. The cautious approach is to disclose it as income from a dividend if it exceeds $900 per year. But you can include an explanation in the memo box on the filing software that the dividend was reinvested. Part 6 covers personal notes and lease agreements. You must disclose notes and any other commercial paper if the amount owed is more than $1,790. And again, this is adjusted annually for inflation. It will be $1,860 for the 2022 PFS. You also report obligations owed by the filer or the filer's family member if the filer had actual control. And please note, it is very rare not to have something to put in this part. If you rent or lease your place of residence, you would list the monthly payments here. If you have a mortgage on your place of residence or receive rental income from an investment property, you would list that here. If you have a car payment where you owe over that threshold, you would include that. If you owe more than the threshold on any single credit card, you would list that. So it's hard not to have something to put in Part 6. Part 7A deals with interests in real property. You must disclose any beneficial interest held in real property by either the filer or the family member. For example, you would list your home, any land or acres that you may own, etc. A beneficial interest may be legal or equitable title. If the filer holds a mortgage and only $1 is owed on it, the filer must still disclose that. If the filer doesn't have a legally cognizable right to the real property or business entity, then you do not include that information on Parts 7A or 7B. Part 7A does not include trust items. Those will be disclosed on Part 9. You disclose anyone else who holds an interest, excluding the spouse or dependent children. For example, if you have a mortgage on your home, you would disclose the mortgage company here. If you hold a tract of land with your sibling, you would disclose your sibling's name as well. Part 7B deals with interests in business entities. You must disclose any beneficial interest in a business entity held by the filer or family member. Business entities is defined in Chapter 572 and includes a sole proprietorship, partnership, firm, corporation, holding company, joint stock company, receivership, trust, or any other entity recognized by law through which business for profit is conducted. And just like in Part 7A, you disclose anyone else holding an interest excluding your spouse or dependent child. Contrast Part 7B with Part 11A, which is where you report ownership interest, not beneficial interest. If you hold both a beneficial interest of any amount and an ownership interest of 5% or more, then you may need to put the same information on both Parts 7B and 11A. Part 8 deals with gifts. You must disclose any gift valued at over $450 received by either the filer or their family member. That $450 is adjusted annually and will be $470 in 2022. The gift definition in Chapter 572 is broader than the gift definition in Chapter 36 of the Penal Code or Chapter 305 of the Government Code, which covers lobbyists. Part 8 does not include gifts reported by a lobbyist as a lobby expenditure, a political contribution, or a gift given to someone related to you within the second degree of consanguinity or affinity. The second degree of consanguinity typically includes parents, children, siblings, grandparents, and grandchildren. The second degree of affinity includes your spouse, your in-laws, your grandparents' spouses, your grandchildren's spouses, things like that. Part 9 includes trust income. You must disclose the source and amount of all income received as the beneficiary of a trust. You must also identify each trust asset from which income was received by the filer in excess of $900. And that $900 threshold will be adjusted to $930 for the 2022 PFS. Part 9 does not include blind trusts, which will be covered in Part 10. Here's Part 10. Part 10A talks about blind trusts. A blind trust is defined as a trust where the trustee is a disinterested party, not the filer, not required to register as a lobbyist, not a public officer or employee, and was not appointed to public office by the filer. If that applies, you must disclose the following information about a blind trust: the fair market value of the trust, the date it was created, and the trustee's name and address. 10B, the trustee must state that they have not revealed any information to the filer except information that may be disclosed on Part 8, and to the best of the trustee's knowledge, the trust complies with this section. Notice that this statement is signed by the trustee, not the filer. For TEC filers, you upload that statement when you are filing your PFS. Part 11A covers ownership of business associations. Remember what we said about Part 7B as it contrasts with Part 11A. 7B is for beneficial interest. 11A is for ownership interest. You must disclose any ownership interest in a business association if the filer or family member held, acquired, or sold 5% or more of that ownership. If you hold both a beneficial interest of any amount and an ownership interest of 5% or more, then you may need to put the same information on both Parts 7B and 11A, as we discussed earlier. Parts 11B and 11C cover assets and liabilities of business associations. You must disclose any assets and liabilities of a business association if the filer or family member held, acquired, or sold 50% or more of the ownership. Contrast that with the 5% on Part 11A. An asset and liability is not defined in Chapter 572. Here's where we start getting into the parts of the PFS that are less common and may apply only to certain types of filers. Part 12 covers boards and executive positions. You must disclose membership by the filer or the family member on a board of any of the entities listed on this slide. This includes nonprofits. If you are paid for this service, you include that information on Part 1A also. Part 13 deals with honoraria. You must disclose anyone who provided transportation, lodging, or meals for a conference where the filer provides services that are more than merely perfunctory. A PFS filer does not disclose an honorarium if the filer separately discloses it as a candidate or office holder, or if a lobbyist discloses it as a lobby expenditure. Contrast this with Part 17, which we will cover later. Part 14 deals with a business that the filer has with a lobbyist. If you and a lobbyist both have an interest in the same business entity, you must disclose that on Part 14. Part 15 deals with lobbyist fees. If you are a state officer and you receive a fee for services rendered by you to or on behalf of a lobbyist, you must disclose the name of each person or entity for which the services were rendered and the amount of each fee by category. This only applies to state officers, not local filers or candidates at the state or local level. Part 16 deals with legislator representation before a state agency. Obviously, it only applies to legislators. If a legislator represents another person for compensation before an executive state agency, they must report the agency name, the person they represent, and the amount of compensation received by category. Part 17 deals with benefits derived from a function honoring a public servant. Remember that this is different from an honoraria, which we discussed in Part 13. In Part 17, you must report any benefit that is derived from a function in honor or appreciation of the filer or family member if it is in excess of $50 and the benefit is used solely to defray expenses accrued in the performance of duties or activities in connection with your elected office, which are not reimbursable by the state or your political subdivision. Part 18 deals with legislative continuances, and again only applies to legislators or legislators-elect, not candidates for the legislature. If the filer obtains a legislative continuance, they must report the party represented, the date retained, etc., what's listed on this slide. In addition to filling out Part 18 of the PFS, that filer must also send that same information directly to the Ethics Commission via the email on this screen, that same one we used earlier, tresapoint@ethics.state.tx.us. Part 19 deals with contracts with a governmental entity. It is required if the filer or family member or any business entity that they had at least 50% ownership interest in was a party to one or more written contracts, and all of the following that is listed on this slide applies. The $2,500 and $10,000 thresholds there are adjusted annually for inflation. They will be $2,560 and $10,220 respectively on the 2022 PFS. The last part, Part 20, deals with bond counsel services by the legislator. This is only for legislators who provided bond counsel services to an issuer as defined by Section 1201.002 of the Texas Government Code. And for each issuance, you must provide the information listed on this screen. So that's it. Simple, right? Remember, you can find a lot of helpful information about personal financial statements on our website. Go to our homepage and then follow the directions on this slide to find the information that you want. For instance, if you're looking for frequently asked questions, go to the homepage, click on Resources on the top left, and then click on Personal Financial Statement. That's where you'll find the frequently asked questions. If you're looking for importing the information, which is only for TEC filers, that's for people who want to use those Excel templates we discussed earlier. You go to the home page, you click on Filing Reports above the picture, then TEC filers, then Personal Financial Statement Reports, and then you go to the bottom of that next page. So if you've got questions, call us or send us an email. We are here to help you, and we will do our very best to answer your questions, whether you are a state filer or a local filer. Just remember, for local filers, we have no jurisdiction over them, but we can try and help if we can. Call us at 512-463-5800 or send an email to reception@ethics.state.tx.us. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.